Boom! All right, ladies and gentlemen, digital marketing. It is the way of the future. You have a business, you need to be a digital marketer of some sorts, and we're going to learn all about that in this episode. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Boss!
Are you ready to dive into the world of creative digital marketing, leadership, and global success? Our guest today is a visionary entrepreneur who has taken a single laptop endeavor and transformed it into an international creative digital performance marketing agency. He's known for his passion for creating beautiful human experiences in the digital realm. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show, Mr. Jarrod Lopiccolo. All right, Jarrod, welcome to the program, man. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
All right.
Happy to be here, man.
Thank you. Let's start off with the obvious question at the beginning. How'd you get here, dude? What was your story to become a digital marketer?
Yeah, so it started when I was actually about 15 years old and just, always around entrepreneurs. I believe it or not, I was making fake IDs that said I was 15 or 16 years old so I can go golf with my buddies. This is living in Vegas. Then realizing I'm like, shit, I actually have a talent here. I can actually do this and make money the right way. Went to school, graduated high school early, was going to school for architecture, met my wife there. And, she was a copywriter. I was a designer. And then we just kind of stumbled on this idea that we could create virtual architecture instead of, focusing on the physical architecture. And ever since then, we've been building beautiful digital experiences, crafting an amazing culture of good humans that lead with really good values and moral compasses. And we're kicking ass, having fun.
All right, man, you broke the cardinal rule. You started working with your significant other. For a lot of people, they'll tell you not to do that. Give me some pearls of wisdom, man. How'd you make that work?
It's interesting. We met on working on projects together. So that was what kind of introduced us right away. She was this great copywriter, understood audiences, understood human behavior. And then I was on the design side, sort of crafting these user experiences. And we just started working together on a project. And actually, when you think about it, if you can align yourself with a partner who has the same life goals, and you're working in the same exact environment and you're just hammering the same nail every single day, you'll actually compound your success like tenfold, not just 1 + 1 = 2. It's like 1 + 1 = 6.5. And so is it hard? Shit. Yes, it's hard to work with your significant other, but the intent is like, you got to come with like a compromising attitude. It's like, all right, she's going to focus on this side of the wheel. I'm going to focus on this. Our Venn diagrams are going to kind of overlap just enough. There's a lot of trust that happens, but I would say, it's not for everyone, but it has definitely worked for us.
I wasn't aware that was something a person could do.
I love
Jump
that.
into the digital marketing space, man. So I told you before the show, I try to teach my kids the value of what it takes to create things like landing pages, creating content clips, creating attention, and driving it to a specific thing. You're creating a human experience that is unique. Can you kind of elaborate on what that human experience is, and then let my students know, like, what's the value in what they're learning here in class?
Yeah, love it. So everyone knows the funnel, right? It's like the awareness, consideration, and then conversion. And basically, as people go through the funnel, their intent to make a purchase or to, buy an experience or, buy a service gets closer and closer to the bottom of that funnel. It's really important, though, when you think about every single stage of that funnel, to craft messaging that will resonate with the audience at that moment in time, right? In the awareness stage, they're probably just doing research and they're looking at competitors and they're understanding. When they're down at that consideration/conversion phase, they're bought in. They know they need to make this purchase or whatever it is. So the key is to really understand where your audiences are and how are you talking to them at each one of those levels and effectively solving the problem that they currently have. And the one thing I would say is in terms of creating meaningful like experiences with these customers is you've got to really give a shit, right? You can't just put out messaging and hope that they're going to connect. You've got to create an authentic relationship between a brand and that consumer. And if you don't, you're going to lose them to the competitor. So that's our big thing is like at Noble, we want to create meaningful connections. And it's the only way to do that is you really have to understand the audience, know exactly where they're at, where are their pain points, and then drive them further to your solution, assuming that that solution is going to solve the problem that they currently have.
Let me ask you about that experience, right? Because I feel like creating the authenticity is easy to say, not easy to do. Like where do you go for getting that kind of, I don't know, feedback or ideas so that the content you're creating or the experience you're creating actually does resonate with people? Because I feel like everybody tries, but then it doesn't work. Why isn't it working?
Well, I think it comes down to, and this might even relate to like working with your spouse, it's about getting feedback, right? Or any team member. So when you're trying to attract that audience, you have to actually get feedback. So whether that's quantitative or qualitative feedback, really doing, we work a lot in A/B testing. So we're going to test creative, to half the audience and then test the creative on another half the audience and getting that feedback and constantly tooling and updating. So you can't just shotgun approach with your marketing. You really, truly have to, set it out there, small portion of it, get some audience feedback, make some adjustments, put it back out there. So it's an iterative process. In fact, all of our clients, none of them do we just do the set it and forget it model. We constantly meet on a monthly basis. We review reports, analytics, we generate insights. We look at what are we going to do the following month. So it's a constant, kind of feedback game. But if you're never getting that feedback, you don't know if these customers are resonating with the brand or resonating with that messaging or, resonating with those conversions. Because it's not just about getting the conversions, right? You've got to make sure that they're fulfilled and happy with that purchase that they've made as well. So then there's the whole advocacy side of it. But at the end of the day, shortest way I can say it, it's about feedback. Get that feedback loop going and then constantly iterate and put it back out there and constantly iterate and put it back out there and such.
Stories are the best way to kind of explain those types of things. So can you give me an example of how Noble is doing that specifically for your clients, how they're taking that real world experience and turning it into that virtual space?
Yeah, so I'll use a client that's near and dear to me. So it's the Lake Tahoe. So those of you that don't know, it's a very large lake that's here on the West Coast, 3 or 4 hours outside of San Francisco. We're the record agency for that client. So we do all of their campaigns, all of their messaging. We've looked at their brand. And what we were finding, especially during the pandemic, is that people were coming that wasn't the audience that we wanted to come. They would come, they would fill their car full of beers. 10 people would stay in a hotel room. They would trash the beaches. And we're like, shit, we don't like this. Like, this is like a beautiful area. It's known for its pristine beauty. It's for its hikes, its paddleboard stand-up. So what do? Right? We started to look at the brand. We started to look at audiences. We created what's called a sustainability audience. So those are people that are conscious about the environment. They are either, showed interest to purchase an electric vehicle or they currently own one. We're maybe looking at specific geos or, zip codes of these people that make a certain household income that, say they like hiking, say they like paddle boarding or, swimming or whatever the case is. And then we attract that audience into market. And then we follow that audience once they're here. What were their purchase behaviors? Did they go to the overcrowded areas of Lake Tahoe or did they go to like some of the maybe not so well-known places? And, did they treat the area with respect? And then we survey the locals. We ask the locals, hey, over the last year, the audiences and the visitors that are coming into market, what do you think about them? Are they the right visitor? And so that's a real world experience where you're taking, a situation, right? Lake Tahoe doesn't have to be marketed to. It'll fill up naturally with guests. But when we want to market them is when we want the right kind of guests coming to that area. So that's been a really successful campaign. We just won an what's called an ESTO award, which is effectively like the Oscars for travel and tourism marketing, just for that effort to show like, okay, we're looking at building sustainable audiences and want to get them in the market. So
that seems like a tedious process, something that's going to take a lot of time to kind of develop, test, tweak until it's actually working the way you want it to. How do you sell that to the client? Like, how do you get them on board, understanding that they're going to be paying you for a while and you don't have the answer right up front? You're going to work on creating that answer for them.
Well, it's a great question. I think when you really dial it back, the client has to have trust, right? So we have to prove ourselves through other experiences. So every agency or whatnot, you got to show a case study that is somewhat analogous to what you're ready to do. If you don't have it, then you got to be pretty transparent with your clients that says, hey, this is going to be a bit of an experiment. But the intent is to keep the client engaged along the entire cycle, right? So you start with them, you do stakeholder interviews with them, you get feedback. You turn that into some insights and findings you present to them, but you're there along the whole way. So the buy-in doesn't happen at the end. It happens every stage along the way. And so much that they give us feedback. They're like, we would have never thought about that. That's really good. We'll take that into consideration. So don't operate in a vacuum. Involve your clients. If you've never done this before, be transparent with your clients. If not, you can build trust because it is going to be a long process. I mean, that process took like 8 months to go through, but we had lots of case studies to show that we've done this before and we're successful.
Case studies are money. They're definitely the example that you want to show that you've already done this, but you also develop trust in other ways. Like you're an avid photographer, outdoorsman. How do kind of your personal interests influence the way you approach digital marketing, leadership, and essentially building that trust with your clients?
Thank you. This is one of the most, I would say, closest subject matter to me. I think one of my superpowers, and everyone has one, mine is in the ability to create meaningful connections. And what that is I've always said to people, like, you want to make a friend, you listen, right? You don't talk, you listen. And what I find is when I'm meeting these clients or we're building this chemistry and this trust, it's really about listening, not just listen to be a salesperson, but listen because you give a shit, and find that authentic connection. To your point, I love photography. I will find ways to connect with people that also love photography. Maybe they love wine and they're in a wine club. Well, I like wine and I'm in a wine club. Let's talk about that. Or maybe they like travel, or maybe they like to go, do this one kind of event every year with their family. It's a tree lighting ceremony or something like that. Whatever it is, you find an authentic connection with those humans. And I promise you, we're not that far away. I think it's more like Kevin Bacon, 1 degree of separation, because you literally can find a connection with every single person if you give a shit. If you don't care, then you're not going to build those meaningful connections. So, but yeah, you'll find it. You've got something in common with someone.
I feel like I grew up in a different time compared to the kids that are growing up today. And like a meaningful connection to me means something a little bit different. I guess it's the way we spoke, shook hands, didn't have any other way to communicate other than in person, really. Compare that to today where there are a lot of meaningful connections. They're just digital meaningful connections. How would you express to somebody how to kind of nurture that relationship? Because some people are good at just initiating the relationship, but not really nurturing it long term. And I think that's where the real value lies in these relationships. How do you nurture them?
Yeah. I think to your point, connections are you bond with some sort of an authentic, tether that holds you together. So even if it's digital and you've never met this person, like, what do you like about them? Why are you following them? Are they interested? Are they, posting food photos and they're doing stuff here? Are they posting travel photos? Are they posting mountain biking photos? Like, obviously you want to associate with people that have similar interests and such. And so I would say, don't just go on there and say, cool, nice, great job, awesome. Like, actually add a little bit into their story or their post. Like, ask, like, how was that trip? How long did it take? Where did you go? What was your favorite part? What didn't you like? I'm thinking about doing something similar. Can you DM me some tips? Like you can have so many connections with people. And it just happened. I was at this event, this Esto event a few weeks ago in Savannah. And I'll tell you, this guy came up to me and his name's Josh. And he's like, Jarrod, how are you doing? Never met him, only met him digitally, but we share such a connection. It took me a little second because like, wait, shit, how do I know you? I'm like, oh, it's Josh from Arizona. Dude, how was that trip? Blah, blah, blah. And we are, because it wasn't just this superficial, I'm going to like this with a thumbs up, or say great job or things. Like, actually dig in a little bit, show interest. Again, you want to make a friend, you listen and you ask a lot of questions.
You've been speaking at various conferences and you've worked with various nonprofit initiatives. What kind of lessons do you have from these experiences? How do they apply to your business endeavors? How do they apply to those nurturing relationships? How does that work kind of play into your role as an agency?
Well, I think I do subscribe to this model about, pay it forward, right? And I think that so many people have given me advice, and there's this great saying, it's like, if you want advice, right, ask for money. If you want money, you ask for advice. And it's funny because that's what happens, right? But at the end of the day, so many people, if you care and you show that you're a good human, right, and you want to like build something of meaning and value, people will help you. And I think it's your job to naturally, if you've been helped before, it's your job to help back. And so that's when I love to speak at universities or conferences, because I feel like it's a duty of mine. Like I have to do it. Like I'm equipped with the skills to do it. I have the connections to do it. I've got the life lessons to show and to speak about it. Like, well, then shit, I'm obligated to do this. And I feel like every time you do it with that kind of a mindset, you get so much more in return. And then that allows us to help build the agency that we have today, which is, again, based on really good values and moral compasses, because you naturally will attract people that have similar interests. But yeah, I just really subscribe to the pay it forward model.
Well, let's talk about the agency itself. So what is it like? If you could put it as simply as possible, what do you do for clients, and who are you looking for? Who's that ideal target audience that you want to go after?
Yeah, so we started it 20 years ago. We were doing web development, so really building out web digital experiences. We since then added on all what they call performance marketing services. So that's like SEO, SEM, A/B testing, conversion rate optimization, all these pieces, programmatic media. All of that is basically driving traffic to your digital experiences. And then, of course, we added brand, which allows us to build on brand strategies, whether it's from like internal, like mission and vision, values for a company, all the way to external messaging of like what kind of audience they want to attract as their customers. So the three of those work in concert with each other: digital experience, performance marketing, and then brand and creative. And when all three of those we can control and work together with, we're effectively the most impactful for our clients. Their budget goes the furthest. We yield the highest results for them. We attract and maintain their audiences. And so that would be kind of what I think is like those three things. In terms of our ideal client profile, really, I would say it splits into two categories. One of them is travel and tourism. So that's the vertical. We love working in the travel and tourism space. And the other is B2B. B2B is a wide category. So you think of fintech, health tech, SaaS companies, those things. But those are the two. We love it when a client has a chief marketing officer, CMO, and we love when there's like 5 or 8 to, at minimum people on that team. So we're not spending a lot of our time educating the client about marketing. We're just getting in and like going after, the work that we have in front of us. But that would be the best. And I would say, anywhere from $500,000 spend a year in terms of an agency of record. So that means we're handling all of their services. That's like a perfect ideal client. But ideal is ideal and doesn't mean that all of our clients are like that.
No, I mean, yeah, that's what you're shooting for, but there's always those in betweens that you help kind of get there as well, because they're not there yet, but they're willing to work with you and they're willing to get started. So what's that minimum viability? If there's a client out there who's like, look, I know I need a team. I'm not the best at this. I need some help. What are you looking for on that end?
Yeah, great question. It really comes down to about, I would say our minimum service revenue per month is about $10,000 a month. And that can be any sort of single service line, maybe even a mix of multiple service lines. In terms of web development, somewhere around 75 as a very, very minimum. But otherwise, they're usually averaging like 150 to 350, somewhere in that price range for a website. But we have a great story. I mean, we picked up Yosemite, big national park. We picked them up. They only had a $50,000 budget, right? And then over the course of 10 years of us working with them, now we're doing 600,000-700,000. So to your point of that land and expand, we never want to isolate someone who could be an ideal client. So yeah, but that gives people kind of an idea.
All right, man, you've been in the travel and leisure space for a while. Any helpful hints or advice for I got seniors that are going to end up going on some senior trips right after they graduate high school. What are some tips and tricks to get them the best possible vacation, at the best price possible with the best experience they possibly can?
So I love to do my own travel booking, just because you just get down a rabbit hole, right? You start reading reviews, you start doing this. So I think it's about really understanding, at the very beginning, what do you want out of this trip, right? So if it's a spring break trip, identify what would be the most ideal trip possible. But I actually think that there's an underlying sort of like message to go into a market, to go where there's locals. And it's just this, it's literally act like a local. And it's why you've got VRBO, Airbnb, all these home away type, companies exploding over the last 10 years, because people want to have an authentic experience in market. They don't want to be seen as a tourist. They want to go to the grocery store and buy charcuterie plates and goods and everything else. So that would be my one advice. No matter what you're doing, no matter what age you are, go into a market and act like a local. Don't act like a tourist, this is where people live. This is where where their money comes from in a lot of cases. And it's like, just go and act like a local.
Let me ask you, dude, because I saw this the other day that New York started to shut down people who were doing short-term rentals. They were like really cracking down on that, making it almost impossible for people to even rent Airbnbs out there. I'd imagine that has a great effect if you're in the travel and leisure space for you guys. Do you guys track things like that to see where an opportunity might present itself?
Yeah, very much. In fact, it is true. Like, you've got this shift where everyone they love the idea. It's like, oh, I'm going to put my house up on rent for a week and then I'm going to go stay with a buddy. I'm going to come back and my mortgage is paid for. The downside of that is that, these communities start to lose some of that fabric, that community fabric, because all of a sudden you've got like 70% of the homes that are on the beach or wherever are no longer locals. And they're just these renters. So yet you're seeing these communities in the term over tourism, you're seeing them start to shut those things down, which obviously has a negative effect. But one success, story is the islands of Tahiti is a client of ours. So we market all 118 islands. That's the Bora Boras and the Moreas and such of the world. And they opened up an inventory. They only had 1,100 rooms across 118 islands, but they opened up this idea of bed and breakfast, right? Guest houses. And they opened it up. There was an inventory of 300 more rooms that came up available. But what we decided to go in with, we said, look, we have experience in doing this in other cities and where it's backfired. So what we did was we hired camera crews and everyone to go in and interview each one of these guest house owners and, talk about what language they speak and, how they grew up there and everything else. So we're trying to, again, with the ones that are going to stay there are going to act like a local and actually treat the area with respect so they can still maintain and hold on to that community, which is what makes a Polynesian culture a culture. And so that's been a really successful thing, is just how do you preserve what that community currently has and not exploit it to a point where you lose the community itself.
Yeah, that's the downside. I mean, you want all those positive, helpful amenities at times, but you also need a bit of that culture when you travel. That's kind of the reason why you're going out there. You want that different kind of experience. I'm not a huge traveling person, but my wife and kids definitely are. So that makes me a traveling person every once in a while. And yeah, having that culture is definitely something that they want to take advantage of. All right, if you could go back to your 17-year-old self, Jarrod, and you were going to start over in a space, what advice would you give to someone getting started so that maybe they can open up their eyes to a career they never thought was even possible?
I think of this often because it's like, what would you tell my earlier self? And I would say, which is one thing I felt like I did the right thing, which was I followed my passion and then money came flying at me, right? But I think what happens is I think people follow money and then they think, well, once I get money, then I can do the things that I'm passionate about. And that what happens is you'll find yourself like, yeah, probably making money, but not actually having a fulfilled life. And then you might wake up and say, gosh, I regret those 10 years and whatnot. So I would just say, follow passion. I promise you, if you follow passion, the money will be there. It just naturally shows up. And there's so much space in this world to craft new ideas, to fit in, to find your group, find your place. But if you avoid that and you just go after the money, which is so easy, that's why they're like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? You want to be a doctor or a lawyer? I mean, that was my parents, right? And then it's like, no. I'm going to follow my passion and then the money will be there. So that would be the one advice.
Yeah, and it's tough because I know parents my age were being told that the whole time. Now they have kids that are growing up, and it's like, what are you going to tell them to do? I mean, the inflation's out of control. It's ridiculous right now. Yeah. Going to college is not as inexpensive as it was when I was going to college. So trying to figure it out there is going to put you in a hole. Like following your passion, some great advice because you don't know what door at least that's going to open up for you. And it's going to be in a space that you love doing what you're going to do. Jarrod, if people want to reach out to you, man, if they want to find out more about what it is you do, how can they do that?
Yeah, so I would say go to our website, Noble Studios. That's NOBLESTUDIOS.com. Take a look at our case studies. Just see if we're the right people. And then there's a contact form. You can reach out that way. That'll get you to the agency. or go to LinkedIn and look up me, Jarrod Lopiccolo. That's Jarrod Lopiccolo. And then just hit me up, direct message me. Don't sell me shit, but if you want to have a good conversation, like I'm totally down, so, and I never, everyone has wisdom of some kind. So I'd love to hear yours,
Dude, absolutely. Hey, man, thank you very much for coming on the show. Any last minute pearls of wisdom or anything you want to share before we head out?
The last thing I would just say is, life is short. I always say time is our only currency, and you have one day to spend it in the right place. So just make sure you're, surrounding yourself with the right people. You're doing the things you love, because time is, shortening every day, and so don't waste it.
Dude, 100%. All right, you've been in the digital marketing space for a long time. I got one last selfish question. It's a testimonial one. Everything from when you booked a spot on the show to a reminder text, emails. Now you were here for about 25 minutes creating content with us. What was your experience like working with the Business Bros?
Super professional. I love the like kind of take the tie off a little bit where it's like chill. It's like I threw the hat on. Normally I wouldn't have a hat, but I was like, I got to match the energy. But it just felt like really professional. Really, you guys are great communicators. And I as a host, it was just easy to have dialogue. So all in all, I'd recommend anyone that has some life journey to share to be on your show.
Appreciate that, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, noblestudios.com, noblestudios.com. If you have, your business needs a little bit of a lift me up. You need some visibility. Maybe you're invisible. You want to move to being visible, maybe some credibility. That will turn into profitability, but it starts with getting your message out there. So check out Jarrod's website. It is noblestudios.com, noblestudios.com. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Jarrod, thank you very much for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, peace. And we're out.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www.businessbros.biz